Hey guys, Palsteron here, and today let's talk about Kinetic Bolt of Fragmentation, the skill that I'll be using in my up-and-coming build. So when I saw this skill for the first time in the gem reveal, I wasn't too hyped, simply because I tried Kinetic Bolt in the past, and I was very underwhelmed by it. However, one thing that did catch my attention was the last line of the gem description. Multiple of these projectiles can hit the same target, and usually when that's the case, it's quite interesting. 1 week in, people started basically posting on Reddit about how crazy this skill is, especially for single target. And here we are. I tried the skill out and it actually completely busted. And we're going to talk quickly about the main points here that I want to discuss. First up, obviously, the single target potential of the skill and how crazy it is with Sniper's Mark. Then I will talk about how to make this an actual clear speed monster and make it into a main skill where you can clear and have single target with a map showcase and everything. And then Archetypes for Kinetic Bolt of Fragmentation, because it has a very particular sort of scaling. But one note before that, I think Kinetic Bolt of Fragmentation is perfectly placed in this league because the league mechanic is so goddamn tanky. Usually when you're mapping, you don't really need that much damage. You can do stuff like Kinetic Blast, and on a strength stacker, you're going to have like 10, 20 million single target damage. Obviously, you're going to have more with overlaps and whatnot. But this skill, we're talking hundreds and hundreds of millions. And that is actually something that you want. The difference between a mapper with 100 million, 200 million damage and a mapper with 20, 30 million is very noticeable. Now, in order to understand how this skill actually works, I will talk about how to make this a main skill. And first up, we have to talk about all the lines here. 85% base damage is quite low. That is lower than, for example, Tornado Shot. And Tornado Shot can shotgun quite a bit, right? But so can this skill. But it will have to obviously be better than that. So it comes with built-in 2 additional projectiles though, which helps quite a bit. Now, how does this skill actually look like? I will just remove some of my support gems right here so we can kind of see how it looks, right? Pretty unimpressive. So what you can see right here is, if we screenshot that real quick, there is a little bit of a zigzag pattern going on right here. So if I put that right here, we have a zigzag, right? Zigzag. That's all it does. And then after that, you have these projectiles flying out. At first, I thought, ooh, is the skill just like very low range? No, these projectiles that are flying out afterwards actually can hit enemies as well, and they scale extremely well with projectile speed. So that's what the line projectile changes direction 2 times actually means, right? Zigzag. All right, changes direction 2 times. Pretty clear so far. It has also a line though that says modifiers which would cause projectiles to fork instead cause them to change direction additional times. So for example, right now we have 2 additional times, and with Awakened Fork, which makes you fork 2 additional times, it actually goes to 4, and all of a sudden it looks like this. So this looks obviously quite a bit more interesting. So in order to make this a main skill and actually have good clear, I would really recommend Awakened Fork. Fork is still okay as well, but Awakened Fork really takes the cake here. So far we learned projectile speed is incredibly important if you actually want to have enough range. Fork almost doubles your range. Fork itself actually only gives you like 50% more. Awakened Fork kind of doubles your range. And then, very important as well, which you're going to see while clearing, is Awakened Chain actually works with this skill. So normally what happens is Chain and Fork kind of don't mash very well with each other. You have to first use up all your chains so it can fork and whatnot. It's just very bad. But on this one here, it gets actually the forks that you have get transformed. They don't fork anymore. It says would cause projectiles to fork instead. And that means these forks will not occur. They will just make your skill last longer. Meanwhile, Awakened Chain will basically just get activated from the get-go. So Chain is actually very synergistic. As well as that, what else is synergistic? Returning projectiles. To basically nobody's surprise, right? So I mean, you can already imagine what's happening, but basically these zigzags are coming back, which is actually pretty good because these projectiles at the end don't come back. The zigzags do come back completely immediately, so it does complete the return faster than other skills would. Now, do you want to use Nemesis or returning projectiles? In my opinion, if you have a build like this, for example, that goes up to like 11 projectiles, you can actually do Nemesis. So we'll show you how Nemesis looks right here. Nemesis looks like this, and well, if you have enough damage to support this and enough projectiles so you can actually hit stuff regularly, then this will be definitely better because you don't have to aim at all. Now, how does this skill look for clear on a good character? This is how it's kind of going to look like. I'm quickly going to get a little bit of juice right here. Let's just go something so we can quickly do it. The reason is I want to kind of make the rares a little bit more tanky, so you can maybe see a little bit of the Sniper's Mark shotgunning. I'm not too sure because I don't think the mobs here have enough HP. This build actually deals, yeah, absurd amounts of single target damage, as you can imagine right here. I guess you saw it a little bit here. I will show you some other clips though where you can see it a little bit better. The lower your damage is, the better you're gonna see those Sniper's Mark interactions, and the more you're going to lag out. This is a very min-max character already. I have like 400, 500 divines into this build, but I just wanted to show you kind of the... I wanted to show you the chains. So what happens right here is basically my projectiles are flying all over the screen. Now, you might have heard a lot of people talk about, oh, you need a clear skill for this, but most people, once they see a single target skill, they kind of just think that's all it can do, which is definitely not true for this skill. You just have to adjust, right? You have to go for chains, you have to go for the fork. It's not even as much of a sacrifice because this skill just has so much inbuilt damage, right? So for example, if you look at a Legion, it has a very, very smooth Legion clear as well. Now, one big thing why I love this skill in the current meta is that it has both this kind of clear, which is very solid, and on top of that, it also has single target damage, which in this league, you just need, right? You need that single target damage. You need to be able to absolutely one-shot these juiced rares, right? You just need to. Now, let's talk about the single target potential, which is basically what everybody's talking about with this skill and the Sniper's Mark interaction. I'll quickly show you a clip from a video that Big Ducks made a while ago. So a lot of people have been focusing on this. The poison, obviously you can test with poison, how many hits you actually get in with Sniper's Mark. And for example, Big Ducks did that right here. And as you can see here, with returning projectiles and everything, you can get a ton of poison stacks. In this case, he got 63. People have been getting 50 to 100. And in case you're wondering, yes, that is 100 times that 85% base damage. Now, in a real scenario, is that going to be perfectly stacked up? No. Especially with Nemesis, it's not going to be perfect. You have to stand on top of enemies. And yeah, it's never going to be like that. But you don't need it. I can tell you that right now. So it shotguns an insane amount of projectiles, and that is because of Sniper's Mark. But why does it look so crazy? Well, Sniper's Mark says projectiles which hit cursed enemies split towards 5 additional targets, and that will then come back to you with returning projectiles. This skill can innately shotgun, which there isn't that many skills that can do that have it on the gem. Every single projectile that you hit with, every single projectile I have right here, let's take Nemesis off, probably better to see. Every one of these projectiles will make 5 of these Sniper's Mark projectiles that then come back to you. And this is not everything though, because this also gets scaled by Mark effect. Up to 75% here from focal point, and then you can either get more with the passive tree, or you can also get a dat which was taken with up to 25% increased effect of your marks. And if you have that perfectly rolled dat which was taken, you actually get to the 100% breakpoint. Every 20% adds an additional target. So at 100%, that is an additional 10 targets. It's completely busted, and it definitely has to be mentioned here for why this skill is so good. So yeah, the Mark effect and a level 21 Sniper's Mark are very important. The reason why level 21 is so important is because it goes from 4 projectiles to 5. So with Mark effect, it goes from 8 to 10. Now, in my personal opinion, this is a strong enough combo that you want to go Spellslinger over Mark on hit. If we look at Spellslinger and the cooldown, it only has a cooldown of 0.6 seconds. Whereas the cooldown of Mark on hit is 4 or maybe a little bit less seconds. Every single rare gets affected by Sniper's Mark, which spreads out infinite projectiles. So that consistency is definitely worth the extra mana reservation of Spellslinger, in my personal opinion. Returning Proj versus Nemesis completely depends on your damage, I would say. Nemesis, as I said, more has like a 360 thing going on, but if you don't have the damage to back it up, you really want the more focused damage on return projectile. Once again, if you have a single target in front of you, these will all overlap. But with Nemesis, you have to stand very much on top, and your initial projectiles are then not really going to overlap, right? Because your initial projectiles will go all over the place. However, returning projectiles comes with a hefty less damage multiplier. So in endgame, you kind of want to make Nemesis work. Now, very important is something like phasing, because simply put, you want to be on top of your enemy as much as possible. This is even more important with Nemesis. Now, with returning projectiles, let's say your boss is in front of you, that's totally fine, right? You can stand right here, and as you can see, totally fine. It comes back to you in the same pattern, and as long as the hitbox is there, you will overlap a ton of times. But with Nemesis, it's a little bit different because projectiles are going all over the place. So what happens if your boss is standing in front of you is all the projectiles that are fired behind you come back to you, but they don't hit the boss at all. So you have to stand actually on top of the enemy. So some things that people could do, for example, is get a Watcher's Eye for Quartz Infusion, for example. So Raider right here has Quartz Infusion. Now, not every build can do that. Obviously, there's really, really good Forbidden Flame, Forbidden Flesh, but that is, for example, one solution. Another solution would be a Watcher's Eye with haste or phasing while you have haste. But if you're just mapping like me, something like a singular point in phasing on kill will also do. But with all those explanations out of the way, where do you actually play this skill? Well, there's a few ones, because we didn't talk about another line on this skill, which is increases and reductions to spell damage also apply to attack damage at 250% of their value. And we know this line already. We have Crown of Ice, which does this, but only at 150%. And we also know it from Battle Mage's Cry, which everybody who's ever played a Strength Stacker knows how annoying it is, and you have to scale a lot of Warcry effect to even get anywhere near 200%. Plus, if you have to go Battle Mage's Cry, you also have to go Red Blade Banner, so that is a lot of opportunity cost. Just in case you're asking, no, these effects do not scale. It's kind of like exposure. The biggest kind of conversion overtakes. So in this case, 250% is the biggest out of anything. How good is this? Well, it's pretty easy to first set up. 10% spell damage equals 25% increased damage with Kinetic Bolt. Is that good? No, it's insane. It's actually just completely busted, and there are some archetypes that can make use of this really well. First one, as I already talked about, is Strength Stacker with Iron Will. You don't have to use anything. No like helmet. Your helmet slot is completely open. Your shield slot is completely open. Just slap on Iron Will, you're done. If we take Iron Will, for example, with 3000 strength, that is a total of 900% spell damage with Iron Fortress, so that will lead you to 2700% increased damage with Kinetic Bolt. It's completely absurd, and in my opinion, the strongest shell for this skill. I'll show off what I got soon. But yeah, in general, Strength Stacker is completely busted with this. The second archetype that could use this skill is actually Mana Stacker with Indigon. Indigon goes even crazier. However, I'm not really sure how you're going to use that efficiently. So you get spell damage for each mana spent up to a total of 2000% increased spell damage. Now, if we do the math real quick, 2000 times 2.5, pretty easy math, 5000% increased damage for Kinetic Bolt. However, I'm not 100% sure. I did POB this. I didn't really find a good way to get everything going. You also need flat damage, and then you're kind of, I don't know, reliant on Arcane Cloak. A big upside is that you actually are going to be in the region where you can pick up some of the wand clusters, which means you can get stuff like the +1 projectile. You can get Leech that you're going to be missing because you're not going to be down here. Pretty nice overall, but I couldn't really make it work where it was sufficient. At least not as a main skill. I can definitely see this as sort of a archetype where you go Indigon and you just go completely ham and you one-shot a boss. But there's already a lot of skills that can do that. I'm more looking for like a main skill sort of thing. But Mana Stacker is potentially the most broken one of these, whereas Strength Stacker is the most main skillable one. Now, to a lesser extent, there is also Wrathpith Globe. However, I will say that I don't really know why you would go for this, because you get a lot of increased spell damage per 100% player maximum life, but I think there is better things you can do with that. Also, you get nothing from the critical strike chance for spells because only spell damage gets converted. But yeah, something important to note when you look at these archetypes is I don't think this is really going to be a budget skill ever, because in order to make this skill truly OP, you have to make use of the first line right here with the conversion from 100 to 250%, and that is not really possible. Without stacking some of these that I just named, there isn't that much spell damage on the tree. Sure, you can start out as a witch, get a very nice temporary buff whenever you're leveling, but after that, there's not that much spell damage to begin with. And sure, you still have a skill that can potentially insanely overlap with Sniper's Mark, but you have to understand that this skill lags you out completely if you don't have the damage to back it up. the more projectiles on the screen, the more it's gonna lag you out. And if you don't have any damage, it's gonna spray around projectiles, completely destroy your frame rate, and you can't even play the video game. So the biggest takeaway from this should be, this is a skill that needs scaling, and it is not gonna be something that's just good from the get-go. However, I'll say this, there's not much competition in the wand slot right now. Wand skills are kind of meh, other than Kinetic Blast being incredibly good. In terms of clear, this league needs single target damage, so I think this is definitely the play if you want to play a Wander by a mile. But with that said, I hope I could show you guys a thing or two about the skill, maybe demystify a few things, show you how to map with it. In general, I will be putting out a build video soon. Before that, I will also drop a leveling guide, because funnily enough, this skill is insane at leveling as well. More on that in a bit though, and since I still don't have a slogan, see you next time.